Hello ladies and gentlemen, MarauderEX here, back continuing on with PlayStation 1 game collection. I've got a stack of games right here. It's this high. Well, granted you have no frame of reference. Why did I do that? Why? I don't know. I think I'm on cocaine today. This is awesome. Let's start off with this part. Hoshigami, Running Blue Earth. This is a Atlas tactical RPG. Again, I'm a sucker for tactics RPG. However, this is so convoluted and crazy, and the battle system is just... It's easily exploitable, it's easily broken, and the game can still dick you over one of 100 ways. And that's all there is to it. It had interesting ideas, a lot of interesting ideas. A lot of failed follow-through on said ideas, but interesting nonetheless. So, next up, Legend of Dragoon. Proof that Sony could make a good RPG if they want to. This actually stood toe-to-toe against the Final Fantasy franchise for a while. It sold very well. Graphics are very impressive. The combat system's a little annoying because it's very timed combo hits, but the concept for it was very impressive. The pacing was actually pretty good, and the art style was awesome. I mean, you can't say no to guys with, you know, dragon armor and giant wings. Some of the English voice acting, however, is ridiculously silly. Darkseith, this is Darkseith's favorite game. He will never forget Gust of Wind Dance. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't played the game, play it and see what I'm talking about. Next up, Legend of Legaia. Very interesting combo combat system. That's the whole reason why I picked it up. I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about it, but I picked it up based off of what the combat system looked like, because I like interesting combat. I mean, just sitting there pressing a button and not quite the same. But I've heard some interesting things about it. It has a sequel on the PS2 that also got very mixed reviews. I figured I'd go with the original and see how I feel about that. So far, the art style just kind of weirds me out a little, but the rest of the games, the rest of it seems interesting. So, this is a game that kind of flopped, and that kind of saddens me. Legend of Mana. I was a huge fan of the Secret of Mana franchise. I loved the original Secret of Mana. I never owned it personally on a physical copy, but everyone I knew that had a copy, I played through the game with them as much as possible, because it was just an interesting concept, a two-player RPG on the SNES. I was expecting the same thing with this, and I didn't quite get it. You can see where they were trying to go with it, but it had very big shoes to fill, and Square didn't fill them. Speaking of big things, Lunar, the Silver Star Story complete. The big box. I love working designs. I miss them so much, because this is what you should get with the collector's edition of a game. This is what they are, the forerunners for collector's editions. This includes 2 game CDs, 1 music CD, exclusive Making of Lunar CD, 100-page leather hardbound art book instruction manual, excerpt from the official strategy guide, full color cloth map. And this was one of their early ones. So you got a cloth map, you got a hardback instruction booklet, plus part of a strategy guide, a soundtrack, a making of CD. And that was one of the earlier ones. Followed up, the game itself is fantastic. It was remade on the PSP as Lunar Silver Star Story Harmony, I think, because they just keep adding stuff to it. But I prefer the original. This was also released on the Sega CD. There are major differences between the PS1 and the Sega CD versions. I've not played all the way through the Sega CD version, but I've heard that there are a ridiculous number of differences in terms of both script, story, pacing, abilities. There's just lots of little tweaks all around. This will probably be the more common version to get. Not the big box, but the PS1 version. So if you do get a chance to pick it up, play it. The PSP version is also drastically different from this and the Sega CD version. And then that's followed up by Lunar 2 Eternal Blue. And again, giant box sets. Look how big these things are compared to each other. The Lunar 2 is even bigger. What all comes with this one? Includes 3 game CDs, 1 music CD, exclusive Making of Lunar 2 CD, 100-page leather hardbound art book instruction manual, full-size Lucia's pendant. It comes with a freaking necklace that's like that big and weighs a metric ton because I think the thing is made out of lead. Exclusive character mini standees and a little map. This one's not a cloth map. That kind of disappointed me a little bit. Not a cloth map, but still lots of fun extras. Working Designs really knew how to go all out, which is probably the reason why they're out of business. Between throwing that much extra stuff with Collector's Edition and the fact that they could never get a game out on time to save their lives. But when they did get a game out, it was worth the wait. Both of those games are fantastic. I'm a huge fan of their work. Next up, Mega Man X6. I don't know why I have this. I truly don't. I don't know why I have this. I hate this game. It has randomly generated levels and an action platformer where you have to collect things to get 100%. No! No! Bad Capcom. Bad Capcom. Plus, this isn't the one with a cute naming scheme. Mega Man X5 had a cute naming scheme where they named all the bad guys after Guns N' Roses people. That's just crap. Next up, this is actually not my game. I'm not entirely sure who I got this from. I actually printed out the case for it because it was in really good shape and it's an interesting game. Mortal Kombat Trilogy. Because, you know, I'm such a big fan of fighting games. Actually, I kind of am, but the Mortal Kombat franchise kind of lost its edge around Mortal Kombat 2. You know, Mortal Kombat 2 that blew my mind when it came out. I remember my next door neighbor got the SNES version for Christmas, and he invited me over to play it, and it blew our minds. It was just, oh my god, this is batshit crazy. I could cut people in half. Why? Yeah, I mean, I played the Genesis version with the blood code, but I was too young to actually be able to do anything other than button mash. I never got any of the fatalities off. Next up, Ogre Battle Limited Edition. It's not a limited edition. It's just the PlayStation version. All the PlayStation versions are the limited edition. It comes with a couple of stickers, which I've got underneath my my manual here. And a little character class chart. So there's the stickers. There's a little class chart that folds out. That way you can figure out what classes are. It's basically the SNES version with some updated graphics, some new animations for spells. That's mostly it. It does have ridiculous load times because it is a early PS1 title, but still, it's a strategy type RPG. I had to go for it. And plus the limited edition thing, I was like, I gotta have this. I can't justify it, but thankfully, everyone who knows me knows that I can't justify half the things I do. So, next up, Parasite Eve, and I'll have its follow-up, Parasite Eve 2. Parasite Eve 1 was a very, very interesting game. Parasite Eve 2 kind of dropped the ball a little bit on it. Battle system is taken kind of from Vagrant Story. They're very similar battle systems, both done by all games done by Squaresoft, in which you have more of a radius of attack. The main character in this is a New York police officer who witnesses a bunch of people spontaneously combusting and one person on stage turning into a giant monster because there is some sort of virus parasite thing that goes around making people burst into flames and turn into monsters. And she is unaffected by it. She can actually use its power to use special abilities like shoot lasers from her eyeballs. I don't remember what the powers are. I think one of them's a healing ability. That's the only one that I can even remotely recall offhand. But the first game was amazing. It was really dark, really gruesome, kind of Vagrant story. A modern Vagrant story meets Resident Evil was kind of the theme they went with it. Parasite Eve 2 it continued the story, but it didn't really bring anything new to the table. And in fact, it just made the story a lot more complicated and a little hard to follow at times. Next up, Rayman. Well, I've got Rayman 1 and Rayman 2, but I'm going to talk about them a little separately. Rayman 1, gorgeous 2D platformer, probably one of the quintessential platformers of the age. If you're a fan of the modern Rayman Origins, Rayman Legends, I forget which one is which. One of them is already out, one of them just got delayed forever because it's supposed to be on the Wii U, and then it's now coming out on everything. Great platformer. This is where it all started. They went to a 3D platformer with Rayman 2, which this was remade on the 3DS, and I've heard mixed things about that. Really, the best version I've heard of is the N64 version, but I got this for much cheaper because the N64 version is much more expensive because it is regarded as one of the better versions of this. But this is when the series goes 3D. Very Mario 64-esque, except you are a character who has no arms and legs, just free-floating hands and feet. So that actually does play into the mechanics of the game a bit. And his weird hair that sticks off the side like this, it can spin around like a helicopter, because that's useful. Next up, another working designs game that this is not really in their normal theme. Raystorm. This is a shoot-'em-up. Gorgeous shoot-'em-up. Also done by Spaz Entertainment. This is probably the better arcade port version. This was also released on the Saturn. Not released in the US, but this one, the ships are heavily 3D, but they're against a kind of 2D background with other 3D ships floating around. The 3D looks a little bit better on the PlayStation because the Saturn wasn't as good at dealing with 3D because of how they did polygons. But fantastic shoot 'em up. If you're a huge fan of shoot 'em ups, grab it. Next up, Saga Frontier. Saga Frontier 2. I've played Saga Frontier. I've not played Saga Frontier 2. I need to. But I had so much fun with Saga Frontier, and the fact that you have 7 starting characters, each one with their own story, and they all kind of interlink in some way, shape, or form. Even if it's a very remote connection. Just playing through these games, or playing through the character stories and learning all of these very unique, wildly different abilities. The world was gorgeous. We sat for hours playing through this, me and a couple of friends of mine. Saga Frontier 2, however, I've heard is pretty much the same game, only a little more boring. It didn't get nearly as good reviews, but if it's even half as good as Saga Frontier 1, then it's worth the purchase. So, next up, another working designs and Spaz title, Silhouette Mirage. This is an interesting 2D action platformer where the main character can switch between two. It's kind of hard to see, but she's got a purple half and a red half, and it's all there's switching involved. There's anime cutscenes. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's also a gorgeous game. The graphics to it are amazing for being a 2D side scroller. So and the fact that there's a little teeny tiny death and a little chariot on the back of the instruction manual. You just gotta. It's so cute and charming and yet so spastic and in your face. Speaking of spastic, Skull Monkeys. This is a follow-up to a PC point-and-click adventure title, done very much like Myst, called The Neverhood. This is an action platformer on the PS1 that is a direct sequel. The Neverhood was one of those interesting games that you're like, okay, it was all... both these games are claymation, like the old-style Christmas Rudolph claymation. That's what these are. So everything that you see, or at least in the Neverhood, this one has some pre-rendered backgrounds, but everything you saw in the Neverhood was handmade. You can see fingerprints all over it, like if you pause stills in Wallace and Gromit, that sort of thing. But in this game you play the main character from the first Neverhood, Clayman, beating his arch nemesis Claw, and he goes to the planet of Skull Monkeys and takes them over, hence the name. Weapons involve like Universe Enema. If you know what an enema is, it's a thing that goes up the butt and cleans you out. So you give the universe one. That's one of the special power-ups. Yeah, it's a freaky game, but it's awesome. Next up, a couple of interesting ones. Soul Blade, Soul Edge. Soul Edge is the Japanese version. Soul Blade is the American version. I cannot play this game, but my parents gave it to me, so I keep it around because it's neat. Soul Blade, however, I can play, and I played the hell out of this in arcades. This is the first time I saw this was at an arcade with a couple of friends of mine. The three of us ended up putting in about $5 a piece in quarters, just beating the crap out of each other, playing as all these different characters, trying to learn how the game worked. I picked up Siegfried, and I never looked back. I've used heavy weapons characters ever since in fighting games. But this is the start of the Soul trilogy: Soul Blade, Soul Edge, Soul Calibur. This is where it begins. Again, Soul Blade here in the U.S., Soul Edge in Japan. But if you're ever curious about how the franchise started, that's what it is, and it actually has aged pretty well given its age. It's not as pretty looking as any of the Soul Caliburs by any means, but great. Next up, one of my wife's games, so I'm not going to really talk about this one. SpongeBob SquarePants, Super Sponge. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm so glad I got her gaming on good games, like Kingdom Hearts and Theta Rhythm and things like that, because I don't think I'd be able to handle having too many titles like this in my collection. Oh, she's going to hit me so hard. That's all I can say. But yeah, so that's part 2 of the PS1 collection. I got one more part with the last of my collection. So yeah, I'll see you then. Later.